I always thought heartbreak would arrive like an explosion. Something loud, messy, public. Sirens and smoke and neighbors standing on the lawn. But the night my marriage died, it came in quietly, like a thief who knew exactly where we kept the spare key. I was folding towels when I heard the laugh. Not his, hers. A high, soft little ripple that didn't belong in my kitchen. I froze with a towel half folded across my arms. The dryer hummed. The clock over the stove ticked too loudly. The house felt occupied. Not by a person, but by a truth I wasn't ready to meet. "Marcus?" I called. My voice sounded steady, practiced, married woman steady. He'd texted an hour earlier, finishing late, big client emergency. The kind of message I'd learned not to argue with. Silence answered first. Then a scrape of a chair, the whisper of quick feet, a door closing too carefully to be innocent. "We have a little half bath off the hallway. It locks from the inside. It also sticks in winter. I know because I've lived inside this house the way a choir director knows the throat of a hymn. Every breath, every pause, where a voice cracks when it pretends it won't. "Baby?" he said, appearing in the hallway like he'd been there all along, shirt untucked, tie in his fist, eyes bright in a way work never made them bright. "Who's here?" I asked. He looked past me, as if the right answer might be taped to the wall. "Nobody. Why?" The dryer beeped. Somewhere behind the bathroom door a phone vibrated, a cheap case scraping cheap tile. I'm a plus-size woman, dark-skinned like my grandmother's coffee, and I've spent a lifetime being told that softness makes you small, that you should apologize for entering rooms, shrink to fit chairs, laugh at jokes that name you as the punchline. I have learned how to make myself invisible in my own life. But invisibility has a cost. You begin to doubt your senses. You begin to call thunder traffic. "Tell whoever's in there to come out," I said. He laughed. "Too fast. You're being dramatic." The bathroom lock clicked. A pause. Then a whisper from the other side, rushed and terrified. "What if she—" Marcus coughed over it. He moved toward the door as if the door belonged to him. "Plumber," he tried. "I thought the sink—" "Plumbers don't whisper," I said, and something inside me, the thing I'd kept asleep for years, opened its eyes. I stepped past him and knocked. 2 clean raps that sounded like facts. "It's my house," I said. "Open the door." No sound. Then the slow surrender of the lock. The door swung as if pushed by a heavy confession. She stood there, a woman maybe 26, hair perfect in a way that comes from time, not weather. Lip gloss with the kind of shine real happiness doesn't need. She kept one hand on her purse like a passport. She started. "I don't need your name," I said. And somehow my voice stayed gentle. Marcus found his. "It's not what you think." That sentence is a religion men join when they run out of language. I looked at the woman again. She wasn't evil. She was simply someone who'd been told the world owed her an easier story than the one she was writing. Her eyes slid away from my body like I was furniture you had to get around, like I was the reason mirrors couldn't be trusted. I stepped back to let her pass. "There's the door," I said. She brushed by me with the delicate impatience of someone who believed she'd be back in an hour when I calmed down. The air she left behind smelled like hotel soap and apology. When the front door closed, the house exhaled. I didn't. I stood in that small hallway with my husband of 7 years and felt something map itself in my chest. A precise, bright line between before and after. Marcus reached for me, maybe to hold me, maybe to stop the truth from falling. "Listen," he said, and now his voice trembled like a rope bridge. "It just happened." "It just happened" is what you say about rain, I said. Not about taking someone into the bathroom I clean on Saturdays. He flinched, like the word bathroom had teeth. "I've been under pressure. You've been distant. We barely—" There it was, the script. We barely. We don't. You never. I have been many things. Distant isn't one of them. I am a woman who remembers birthdays and buys the right detergent and knows the name of the receptionist at his dentist's office because she was kind to me when our insurance changed. I am a woman who pays bills on time and still texts her mother goodnight. I am a woman who can cook a roast that makes strangers cry. I am a woman who stayed. "Go sleep at your brother's," I said. "Take your guilt with you." "Baby, don't be like that." "Be like what? Awake?" I picked up my keys. "You have 5 minutes to pack a bag, Marcus. If you're still here by the time I come back from the corner store, I'm calling your mother. And you know she believes in hell." His mouth opened, then closed. He's always been brave on paper. Real life had never asked him to use it. I left. The night felt colder than it was. Streetlights made halos on the wet sidewalk. I walked to the bodega on the corner and stood in the aisle between cereal and Mercy until my hand stopped shaking. The cashier, a woman with tired eyes and a nose ring that sparkled like refusal, watched me count my breath. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I will be." I bought nothing. I walked home. The house was quiet except for the dryer and the ache. Marcus had gone. He took the car I liked and the charger I needed. His toothbrush still smiled in the cup like nothing had happened. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the flowered vinyl tablecloth we keep because it was my mother's. I thought of calling her. I didn't. Moms have a way of turning grief into action, and I wasn't ready for instructions. I needed to hear my own voice first. My phone buzzed, a message from my cousin Tasha, who lives for spilled tea she didn't earn. "Girl, you okay? I just saw Marcus's IG story. Is that someone else's hand?" I didn't answer. I opened Marcus's page. There it was. A boomerang from earlier that evening. A glass clinking another glass in a bar I recognized, captioned, "Late nights make big deals." In the reflection of the bottle behind the bar, 2 faces blurred into one. It would have been almost funny if it hadn't been my life. I scrolled further and found a tag from the woman in my bathroom. Her account public, her smile permanent. A photo from the elevator lobby at his office tower, the kind of photo that pretends it isn't posed. Caption: "He said I make him forget the time." Underneath, 3 red hearts, 1 from Marcus. I put the phone down like it might bite. The house began to sound like a stranger's. The refrigerator breathed in and out. The upstairs bathroom dripped with a patience that felt like mockery. Somewhere a neighbor's TV laughed on cue. I told myself not to cry. Then I did, quietly. The way people cry when they're trying not to wake a child. I cried because I had built a life the way you build a cathedral. Slowly, lovingly, with the kind of care you can't invoice. And he had found a back door to burn. The crying passed. That's the thing about tears. They are not a home, only a hallway. I wiped my face, opened the notebook where I keep lists, groceries, errands, reasons to forgive, and wrote 3 new sentences in a hand that looked like someone else's. Change the locks, get tested, tell the truth. The truth. Not to Tasha. Not to the internet that waits like a crowd with popcorn. To me. I said it out loud in the kitchen where we kept our wedding gifts. He cheated. The word felt less like a knife than a key. Doors began to appear. I slept on the couch, not because the bed scared me, but because I wanted the morning to find me where the night had left me. Awake, upright, choosing. At 6:12 a.m., his mother called. Marcus must have been braver than I thought. Or dumber than I feared. Amara, she said, her voice already stitched with prayer. What happened? He made a mistake, I said, giving her the line he would have handed me if I still worked for his story. Men do, she said, as if human history were a witness. But a wife? I'm a woman before I'm a wife, I said. And a woman deserves respect. Silence. Then, softly, come by after church. We'll talk. I'll let you know, I said, and we both understood that letting you know lives in the same house as goodbye. At 7:31, he texted, "We need to talk. I'm sorry. It didn't mean..." I muted the conversation. My phone, finally obedient, went quiet. At 8:03, I opened the windows. The winter air slapped me clean. I let it. I stripped the bed and washed the sheets on hot and high. I threw out the orange juice he liked and drank water the way doctors tell you to drink forgiveness. I moved through each room, touching the life we made and deciding what part still belonged to me. At 9:45, the doorbell rang. I knew the knock. It was owned by a woman who believed she had the right to look me in the eye. I opened the door. The bathroom girl stood there, wearing the kind of face you put on for funerals. Respectful, brave, not sorry enough. I need to explain, she said. You need to go, I said. He told me you were separated. They always tell somebody something. I didn't know you were... She stopped herself before she said big. I watched the words stumble on her tongue and fall to the doormat. I'm his wife, I said. For now. She swallowed. I'm pregnant. The world tilted so fast I had to put a hand on the doorframe to keep from falling out of it. She watched me, expecting a scene, a slap, a messy kindness. I did none of it. I stood very still. I counted to 7 because the Bible likes that number and I needed an ally. How far? I asked. 8 weeks. 8 weeks ago, I was baking a sweet potato pie for his promotion. 8 weeks ago, he told me my laugh made Mondays human. 8 weeks ago, we were us. Does he know? She nodded. Then tell him again, I said, and closed the door. Not a slam. A period. I slid down the wood to the floor and pressed my palms to the cool grain like it might learn a new prayer for me. A sound tried to claw its way out of my throat. I didn't let it. I stood up instead. I put on jeans and a sweater and the lipstick my mother says looks like courage. I braided my hair back from my face like a woman preparing to see her future and tell it she'd be ready by noon. At 10:22, I took the train downtown. I didn't know exactly where I was going until I was outside his office building staring at our reflection in the glass. Me, the city, and a woman I didn't know yet but wanted to. I texted him one sentence. Meet me in the lobby, 10 minutes. He came down at 9. Of course he did. Charm has always looked punctual on him. Amara, he said, reaching for the part of me he used to own. I stepped back. Is it true? His eyes flickered like a bad connection. Don't insult me. Is she pregnant? A beat. Then a nod that weighed the same as a wrecking ball. Okay, I said. That's it? He asked, as if I'd failed an exam he wrote. For now, I said, because anger is a luxury, and I was budgeting for survival. You're going to leave me alone. If you need to contact me, go through a lawyer. If you show up at my house without an invitation, I will call your mother and the police in whichever order makes you sweat more. Please, he whispered. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I said, and now I'm making mine. I turned before he could see my mouth betray my eyes. I walked out onto a street that didn't know my name and felt the world rearrange itself. Not in my favor, not yet, but away from him, which is a kind of grace. I didn't look back. I've done enough of that for one life. By noon, I was at my mother's table, my hands around a mug of tea she swore could fix anything except men. She listened without interrupting, her fingers pressed to her lips like she was holding in all the times she wanted to say, I told you. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hands in hers. Baby, she said, I can't make this easier, but I can make sure you don't do it alone. I cried then, finally, into a lap that never made me feel like too much. When I was done, she wiped my face with the corner of her apron and said, We will write a list. She believes in lists the way doctors believe in oxygen. We wrote, attorney, clinic, locks, bank. We wrote, breathe. We wrote, remember. When I left her house, the light had changed. The city looked less like a witness and more like a jury that might believe me if I spoke clearly. I walked to the bus stop and felt people look at me the way you look at weather moving in, respectfully, wondering if it will pass. It won't. Not this time. My name is Naomi Price. I am a big, dark-skinned woman from a line of women who learned how to hold the world up without asking it to notice. My husband cheated on me, and the girl in my bathroom is 8 weeks pregnant with his apology. I have no idea how to live through next week, but I know how to live through this moment. One breath, one phone call, one door I close that stays closed. Tomorrow I will find a lawyer. Tonight I will sleep in my bed because I paid for that mattress with a double shift in July and grief doesn't get my good sheets. And if you're listening, if you've ever been told that your body is a reason to accept less, hear me now. The truth might break you open, but breaking open is how light gets inside. I am not a joke. I am not an accident. I am not the quiet one anymore. The next morning, the city felt different. Even the air sounded like it had seen too much. I woke up before the alarm, heart already racing, like my body was afraid of what my mind might remember. The bed was too big now. The pillow on his side still held the shape of his head, a small, quiet crime scene. I changed the sheets again, this time without crying. Not because it didn't hurt, but because tears were starting to feel like currency, and I'd already spent too much. I made coffee, black and bitter, the way grief likes it. Then I dialed the number my mother had written on the back of a church flyer. "A good lawyer," she said, "and not one of those men who talk more than they listen." The receptionist sounded calm, efficient, as if betrayal was just another slot in their daily schedule. She gave me an appointment for noon. I wrote it down next to a list of things I still owned, because it was starting to feel like everything else belonged to someone else now. At 11:48, I walked into the law office downtown. Tall windows, polished floors. Silence expensive enough to make you whisper. The lawyer was a woman, early 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Her name was Rhonda Mills. When she shook my hand, she didn't ask what happened. She said, "Let's start with what's yours." That sentence, simple, clean, was the first kindness I'd heard in days. We went through the details. 7 years of marriage, shared mortgage, joint account, no children. I hesitated before adding, "But there's a pregnancy." Her pen stopped. "Yours?" "No," I said quietly. "Hers." She sighed, not judgment, just the sound of experience. "Then we move faster," she said. She outlined the steps: separation papers, asset freeze, next of kin notification. Each word felt like a small funeral. But somewhere beneath the grief, I felt something new. Direction. When I left, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing. The city was loud again. Horns, sirens, people living lives that hadn't fallen apart yet. For the first time since that night, I didn't feel like drowning. I felt like rebuilding. I went to the clinic next, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The waiting room was painted in colors meant to calm you. They didn't. I filled out the form. Married, no birth control, possible exposure. My hand shook when I wrote that last part. The nurse was kind. She didn't look surprised. When I told her why I was there, she just nodded and said, "You're not the first, honey. But you might be the last if you handle it right." Tests, vials, the sound of gloves snapping. She talked while she worked, about how women come in every week with the same story. Different faces, same silence. When she was done, she put a hand on mine. "You're gonna be fine," she said. I wanted to believe her. I didn't yet. That evening, my phone rang. His mother. Her name lit the screen like a warning label. I answered anyway. "Mama Price," I said. "Naomi, we need to talk." Her voice was thick with authority, the kind of tone that made grown men sit straighter in church. "I heard you're filing papers." "Yes, ma'am." "You can't do that. There's a baby involved." I took a breath. "There's a baby involved that isn't mine." "Still his blood," she said. "That means it's family." "Then you raise it," I said, and immediately hated how sharp I sounded. But she kept going. "You can't throw away a marriage over one mistake. You're a woman of faith, Naomi. The Lord forgives." "I'm not the Lord," I said softly. Silence stretched like rubber between us. Then she whispered, "I thought you were stronger than this." "I am," I said. "That's why I'm leaving." I hung up before she could answer. Then I stood in my kitchen again. Same table, same clock, same house. But this time it felt smaller, like it was shedding a skin that didn't fit anymore. I opened the window. Outside, kids were playing in the street, chasing a ball that glowed orange in the sunset. Their laughter felt foreign, like music from a place I used to live. I whispered to myself, one day, I'll laugh again too. And I believed it. Not completely, but enough. A week passed. 7 days that felt like 7 years. People talk about heartbreak like it's a sharp pain, but it's not. It's dull, constant. Like carrying a stone in your chest that never gets lighter, only familiar. I'd stopped checking his messages, stopped explaining myself to cousins and friends who texted, "You too can work it out." Stopped pretending that silence meant peace. Then, on a Friday night, he came back. Not a call, not a text. Just a knock. Steady, confident, like he still owned the rhythm of my door. I opened it because I wanted to see what kind of face a man wears when he's already broken something beyond repair. He looked thinner. Or maybe guilt just takes weight from men differently. A small bouquet of white flowers trembled in his hand. "Can I come in?" he asked. "This is still my house," I said, "not our house." He swallowed and nodded, stepping inside like someone entering a church they haven't prayed in for years. The air between us was full of ghosts, laughter, arguments, the smell of Sunday breakfast. "I know you don't want to see me," he started, voice shaking. "But please, just listen." I folded my arms. "You had 7 years for me to listen. Go ahead." He sat down at the table like it might forgive him if he stayed humble enough. "She told me," he said quietly, "about the baby." I didn't answer. "She's keeping it," he continued, "but she's not asking for anything. I want to do the right thing." "Finally," I said, "you learned the words. Shame it took betrayal to spell them." He winced. "Naomi, please. I made a mistake. I was stupid. I was weak." "Stop calling weakness an excuse. Weakness is forgetting to buy milk. What you did was a decision." He rubbed his face. "I miss you." "No," I said softly. "You miss the version of me that believed your stories." He looked up then, eyes red, voice cracking. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling, church, something. Please." I studied him. The man I once thought was home. Now he looked like a stranger standing in the ashes of everything I built. I wanted to scream, to throw every word he'd ever said back at him. But instead, I whispered, "Do you love her?" He froze. "No. God, no." "Do you love the baby?" He hesitated. "It's my blood." "That's not love," I said. "That's biology." His jaw tightened. "What do you want from me, Naomi? Punishment?" I shook my head. "No. I want silence. Peace. My name back." He stood, pacing. "You can't just erase me." "I don't have to," I said. "You did that yourself." He stopped, staring at me like he didn't recognize who I'd become. "You've changed." "I started paying attention," I said. He walked to the door, defeated but still trying to control the ending. "I'll call you tomorrow." "Don't," I said. "Tomorrow's already mine." He lingered, eyes wet. You really mean to walk away from everything? Everything? I laughed softly. You mean from you. Everything else I'm keeping. He nodded, slow and broken, then opened the door. The night swallowed him the way the truth swallows lies. Completely, without apology. I stood there long after he left. No tears this time. Just a strange stillness. The kind that comes when pain has finally done its job. I walked to the mirror in the hallway, the same one that used to make me flinch. Now it looked like an ally. I touched the glass and whispered, "You stayed loyal to the wrong person, but at least it taught you how to be loyal to yourself." For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt proud. Not of what I lost, but of what I didn't let it turn me into. When you lose something that used to define you, the hardest part isn't letting go. It's deciding what comes next. I'd worked at the same logistics firm for almost 8 years. Same desk, same coffee mug, same boss who thought calling me big personality was a compliment. After Marcus, that office started to feel like a museum, full of things that used to mean something, but now just smelled like dust and survival. So one Monday morning, I printed my resignation letter. No long speeches, no explanations. Just, "Thank you for the opportunity. I'm choosing peace." My boss blinked. "You got another job lined up?" "Not yet," I said, "but I've got faith. And rent money." He laughed, awkward, not knowing whether to clap or pity me. I didn't wait for either. I walked out and didn't look back. For the first time in months, the city felt wide open. I took the long way home, stopped at a cafe I used to love before marriage made time a luxury. That's where I met him. He was sitting 2 tables away, typing fast on a laptop covered in stickers. Tall, brown-skinned, glasses, mid-40s maybe. He looked like someone who'd seen things and stopped pretending he hadn't. When I dropped my napkin, he handed it back with a smile that didn't ask for anything. "Rough day?" he asked. "Rough year," I said. He nodded, like he understood the language of bad timing. "I'm Caleb," he said. "I do IT consulting, which is a fancy way of saying I fix other people's mistakes for money." "Naomi," I said. "I do damage control too, just not for computers." We both laughed, the kind of laugh that feels borrowed at first, then remembered. He didn't flirt, he didn't stare. He just listened when I said I'd recently left my job and told me about a startup that needed operations help. "They're small, but they pay fair," he said. "And they don't care about appearances, just results." He slid a business card across the table. "Tell them Caleb sent you." I looked at the card, then at him. "Why help me?" He shrugged. "Because someone once helped me when I looked exactly like you do right now. Tired, but trying." I didn't promise I'd call, but I did, the next day. The interview was short. The founder, a young woman named Jenna, seemed more curious than cautious. "I looked up your experience," she said. "Why'd you leave your last job?" I stopped pretending it made me happy. Her smile widened. "You start Monday." The office was small. 1 floor, 12 people, all running on caffeine and chaos. But it was honest work. And for the first time in years, no one looked at me like I had to prove I deserved the chair I was sitting in. Days turned into weeks. Caleb stopped by sometimes, bringing extra coffee or fixing the Wi-Fi. He never crossed the line, never pushed. Once, when I stayed late, he said quietly, "You don't have to prove your worth to anyone anymore, Naomi." I looked up, surprised. "What makes you think I am?" He smiled. "Because I used to." Something about that stayed with me. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was recognition. Two broken things nodding at each other across a table. At home, nights felt different now. The house didn't echo as much. I started cooking again, not for him, not to fill the silence, just because I liked the smell of garlic and music playing low. Mama said, "You sound lighter on the phone." "I'm learning," I told her. "Learning what?" "That peace isn't quiet. It's active. You have to build it." She said she was proud. I believed her this time. One Saturday morning, I caught myself humming while folding laundry. Same chore, different spirit. That's when I realized healing doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in through small things. I still thought about Marcus sometimes. Not with anger, with distance. Like remembering a city you moved away from. The street still there, but you'd never go back. And one night, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, I finally whispered it out loud to the dark. "I forgive you. Not for you. For me." The wind carried it somewhere I didn't need to know. And for the first time since the betrayal, the air around my house didn't feel heavy. It felt like breathing again. It happened on a Tuesday, that ordinary kind of day that doesn't warn you it's about to test your progress. I was walking out of the grocery store, headphones in, playlist full of songs that used to hurt but now just sounded like rhythm again. And there he was. Marcus. Same eyes, same cologne, same guilt stitched into his smile. He looked surprised, like the universe had betrayed him by putting me in front of him looking alive. "Naomi," he said softly, like saying my name might rewind time. I pulled out one earbud. "Marcus." That was it. Just his name. No invitation. He glanced at my shopping bags. "You look good." "I am good," I said. He laughed. Small, nervous. "You're still funny." "I'm not joking." For a second, we just stood there, two ghosts meeting at the border of what used to be home. "I heard you left your job," he said, "and found a better one." "You've changed." "That's the goal." He looked down, then back at me. "The baby's born," he said quietly. "A boy." I didn't flinch. I had already done all my breaking months ago. "What's his name?" I asked. "Malcolm." "Good name," I said. "Strong. Like he'll learn from his father's mistakes." Marcus sighed, long and heavy. "I deserve that." "You deserve peace," I said. "But not from me. You'll have to earn it somewhere else." He nodded, trying to find words. "Naomi, I think about you every day. About what I did. About how wrong I was." I believed him. For the first time, I actually believed he meant it. But belief and forgiveness aren't the same thing. Forgiveness is when the wound stops needing attention, and mine had already scarred. "I'm glad you're trying," I said. But your redemption isn't my responsibility. He took a step closer. Do you ever miss me? I smiled. Not bitter, not sweet, just honest. I miss the woman I was before you broke her. But she's gone. And I like the one who came after better. He blinked, and for a moment, the silence between us turned holy. Not because of love, but because of understanding. Then Caleb's car pulled up to the curb. He leaned out the window, smiling. Hey, you good? Marcus's eyes flickered. Jealousy is fast like that. It doesn't ask for permission. Who's that? He asked. A friend, I said. Someone who knows what respect sounds like. Caleb got out, helped me with the bags. He didn't even glance at Marcus. Not out of arrogance, but because some men don't need to measure themselves against others. Ready? Caleb asked. Always, I said, and turned to leave. Marcus called after me, his voice cracking. Naomi, wait, please. I stopped, just long enough to look him in the eye. You already had all my waiting, Marcus, I said. Now it's my turn to go. I got in the car. Caleb didn't ask questions, he just drove. The city lights slid past us like a film I'd already seen. After a while, he said quietly, That was him, wasn't it? Yeah. You okay? I think I finally am. He smiled. You handled that like peace had a plan. Maybe it does, I said. Maybe it's me. When I got home that night, I looked in the mirror again. Not for flaws, for proof. And there it was. Not perfection, but peace. I touched my reflection and whispered, You survived love's worst version. Now you get to write your own. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone healing. I felt like someone healed. 3 months after that day at the grocery store, my life looked almost unrecognizable. The startup had grown. My title changed from operations assistant to project manager. Jenna, my boss, said it during the Monday meeting like it was nothing. Naomi's running the new logistics branch, she announced. Effective immediately. Applause followed. Short, genuine, real. But inside, I froze. Success is strange when you've been taught to expect loss. Every victory feels like a setup. Every smile looks temporary. After the meeting, Caleb found me standing by the coffee machine staring at the floor. You should look happier, he said. I'm trying, I replied. Try less. Just let it be what it is. I shrugged. It's hard to enjoy something when you're waiting for it to vanish. He leaned against the counter. You know what that's called? Trauma with a calendar. That made me laugh. An honest, startled laugh I hadn't heard from myself in months. He smiled. There she is. That evening, he offered to drive me home again. The sky was low and pink, the kind of color that makes even bad days look merciful. I sat quietly, watching the lights shift on the windshield. You ever think about him? He asked gently. I do, I said. But not like before. It's more like remembering a scar. You can't forget it's there, but it doesn't bleed anymore. He nodded. That's healing. I turned toward him. What about you? You ever get past yours? He chuckled, low and rough. My wife left me 3 years ago. Said she couldn't handle my quiet. Guess some people mistake peace for distance. I looked at him. Really looked. The calm posture, the careful hands. You never told me that. You never asked. You're right, I said softly. Maybe because I wasn't ready to hear someone else's pain. I thought mine was too big to share the room. We stopped at a red light. He glanced at me, then back at the road. You know, Naomi, not everyone's trying to hurt you. Some of us just want to see you breathe. That line stayed with me all night. At home, I made tea and sat by the window, thinking about how strange it felt to be seen without being touched, understood without being owned. It scared me. Not because it was wrong, but because it was new. The next morning, Jenna called me into her office. She looked exhausted. Naomi, I need to ask you something, she said. We're expanding, and I need someone to lead the new branch in Chicago. Chicago? I repeated. It's temporary, 6 months, but it's a big step. You'd be in charge. Full autonomy, full salary bump. I felt my heart jump. Ambition wrestling with fear. A year ago, I wouldn't have even hesitated. Now, I thought about starting over. New people, new expectations, and the tiny voice that still whispered, "Don't trust anyone." That evening, I met Caleb again at the cafe where we first talked. I got an offer, I said. Chicago. Big deal. But I'm scared. He nodded. Scared of what? Of leaving what feels safe. Safe or familiar? I hesitated. Maybe both. He smiled. You're not afraid of change, Naomi. You're afraid of good things lasting. The words hit harder than I expected, because they were true. I stared at him for a moment, then said, You really think I can do it? I don't think, he said. I know. And even if it falls apart, you'll survive. You already proved that. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. Same reflection, fuller, older, steadier. But now, for the first time, I saw more than just survival. I saw possibility. The next morning, I emailed Jenna. I'll take the Chicago project. Then I texted Caleb. You were right. I'm done waiting for good things to disappear. He replied, Good. They were waiting for you to show up. And just like that, something inside me clicked back into place. Not the old me, not the broken one. A new version. Quieter, braver, ready. Chicago was colder than I remembered. Not just the weather, the people, the sky, even the buildings looked like they'd learned to survive winter better than warmth. I moved into a small apartment on the 10th floor. Bare walls, single window, a hum from the heater that sounded like someone breathing beside you when you sleep alone. The first week I kept waiting to feel proud, to feel like I'd made it. But mostly, I felt hollow. Work kept me busy. New team, new pressure, new hours. People respected me, maybe even admired me. But respect isn't company. I'd come home, cook for one, and sit in the glow of my laptop, pretending to read. It was strange how silence could feel heavier than grief. One night, after a long day, I got a message from Caleb. How's the new boss life treating you? I smiled. Loud, messy, cold. Perfect. He replied with a laughing emoji, and then, Don't let the cold fool you. You belong there. Big cities make big people feel seen. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. Because maybe he was right. Maybe I'd spent too much of my life trying to shrink. The next weekend I forced myself to explore. Downtown, the river glowed like melted metal under the streetlights. Couples walked hand in hand. Musicians played on corners for people too distracted to listen. I stopped by one of them, an old man playing saxophone like it was the last thing he owed the world. He saw me watching and smiled. "You alone tonight?" "Yeah," I said. He nodded. "Good. That's how you learn who you are." That night I walked home lighter. In the following weeks, things started to change. I stopped checking my phone before bed. I started cooking new recipes just to see what I liked, not what anyone else preferred. I bought a plant. I even talked to my neighbors. A couple from Kenya who reminded me that starting over doesn't erase where you came from. But the truth is, healing isn't a straight line. Some nights, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with a knot in my chest, dreaming of Marcus's voice. Not the man, just the sound of belonging. Then I'd remind myself, I don't miss him. I miss the idea of not being alone. One night, during one of those quiet hours, my phone buzzed again. It was Caleb. "Still awake?" "Unfortunately. Me too." We talked for an hour, about work, music, the things we wish we'd said years ago. No flirting, no pretending, just honesty. When we hung up, I realized I was smiling in the dark, and for the first time the silence didn't feel so heavy. Months passed. The Chicago office hit record numbers. Jenna called to congratulate me. "Looks like the move paid off," she said. "It did," I answered. "Just not in the way I expected." She laughed. "That's how life works. The paychecks, never the real reward." On my last week before returning home, my team surprised me with a small celebration. There was music, cheap cake, and laughter that actually reached my bones. When they toasted to "the woman who saved the company's sanity," I didn't shrink, didn't blush. I smiled. That night, standing by the window overlooking the frozen city, I whispered to the glass, "You're not broken anymore. You're just new." The reflection smiled back, fuller, softer, freer. The next morning, I packed my things. One suitcase, one plant. One woman who finally knew her worth, didn't depend on anyone's apology. Before leaving, I texted Caleb, "Back in town next week." He replied instantly, "Dinner's on me. I owe you for surviving Chicago." "You owe me nothing," I wrote. "Then I'll call it gratitude," he said. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to protect myself from kindness. As the plane lifted off, I looked out the window. The clouds below looked like an ocean I'd finally learned to cross. No map, no captain, just faith. Coming home felt different this time. Not like returning to a place, but to a person. And that person was me. The city looked smaller, or maybe I'd just grown. The same streets, same buildings, same corners where ghosts used to whisper. But now, they didn't scare me. They looked like memories that had learned their place. Mama met me at the station. She hugged me so tight I almost dropped my bag. "You look good, baby," she said, holding my face like she could read peace on my skin. "I am," I said. And for once, it wasn't something I had to convince myself of. That night, I slept in my old room. The wallpaper hadn't changed, but I had. When I woke up, the morning sun hit the mirror across from the bed, the same mirror I used to cry in front of, asking what was wrong with me. Now I saw the same woman, just finally standing in her own light. The next evening, Caleb came by. No grand gestures, no flowers, just him, steady, calm, familiar. He wore that same soft smile that said, "I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here." "You look like you finally slept," he said. "I did," I answered. For the first time in a long time, I slept without waiting for something to go wrong. We sat on the porch, 2 cups of tea between us, the sound of crickets filling the pauses. It wasn't romantic silence. It was peaceful. That kind that says everything's already been said. After a while, he asked, "So what's next for you, Naomi Price?" I smiled. "I don't know. And that doesn't scare me anymore." He nodded. "That's freedom." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Turns out, freedom isn't running away. It's coming back, without the weight." We talked about small things after that, music, recipes, memories that didn't hurt anymore. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You know, you never told me what you learned through all this." I thought for a second, then said, "I learned that love isn't supposed to make you disappear, that being soft doesn't mean being weak, and that sometimes losing someone isn't punishment. It's preparation." He smiled. "Preparation for what?" "For me," I said. "For finally meeting myself." The sun began to sink, painting everything gold. I realized then that the story wasn't ending. It was just quiet now, finally at peace with itself. Marcus texted a few weeks later, something about wanting to meet, just to talk. I didn't reply, not out of anger, out of clarity. Some chapters don't need closure. They just need distance. I spent my days working, cooking, calling Mama, and sometimes sitting with Caleb when words weren't necessary. People still whispered, of course. Some said I'd changed too much. They were right. One Sunday afternoon, I stood outside the church my mother still attended. A woman from the congregation smiled at me and said, "You look happy, Naomi." "I am," I said. "Finally." She nodded. "He came to service last week." Looked lost. "I hope he finds his way," I said. "But that road doesn't come through me anymore." As I walked away, I realized something simple and holy. I didn't hate him. I didn't even hurt anymore. I just didn't belong to that story. And that's the thing nobody tells you about healing. It's not about forgetting who broke you. It's about remembering who you were before the breaking and loving her enough to never leave her behind again. Later that night, I stood in front of my mirror once more. Same reflection, different woman. I smiled softly and whispered, "I'm not the quiet one anymore." And the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt earned.